Imagine a fighter jet so refined, so instinctively lethal that it can snatch a target out of a storm without breaking stride. A jet that threads a missile through chaotic weather, disappears before the sound fades, and leaves enemy pilots wondering whether they ever saw it in the first place. A machine engineered around its pilot so completely that the cockpit becomes a floating command center, calm, crystalline, and fast enough to make decisions at Mach speed. That jet is the F-16. It's old enough to carry a legacy, yet young enough to rewrite one. And now, Ukraine has it. Tasked with missions it was never designed for, performing them at a level that was never part of the plan. This is precisely why Russia is nervous. Because in Ukrainian hands, the F-16 isn't a relic or a symbol, it's a living strategy. Lean, distributed, slippery, smarter than it looks. It's doctrine on afterburner. And it's doing this by stepping into roles no one expected it to fill at a scale no one anticipated. If that sounds familiar, it's because this mirrors the Abrams strategy we've seen before. Only this time, the stage is higher, the velocity's greater, and the stakes stretching all the way into the stratosphere. The arrival of the Vipers. By the summer of 2024, the first Ukrainian F-16s entered service, marking the peak of a sweeping international coalition that pooled donors, trainers, maintenance crews, and industrial lifelines into a single synchronized effort. By February 6, 2025, Ukraine formally confirmed the delivery of Dutch aircraft, with combat operations planned to follow quickly. Denmark's pledge of 19 fighters arrived steadily through late 2024 and early 2025. The Netherlands completed delivery of 24 jets by May 26, 2025. Belgium tied its shipments to the progress of its F-35 program, unlocking the pipeline as soon as new stealth fighters rolled off their production line. Individually, none of these numbers win a war, but together, as a living, breathing ecosystem, they reshape the geometry of the air war. Training was never an afterthought. It was the spine of the whole plan. Romania's European F-16 training center became the dedicated pipeline, stocked with Dutch jet spot for the symbolic price of €1. Half of its training capacity was earmarked for Ukrainian pilots for years ahead. And this wasn't just about flight hours, it was about teaching doctrine, radar discipline, Western air combat logic, and the muscle memory that wins dogfights when missiles with 100-kilometer reach fill the sky. Ukraine is building a generation of pilots who don't blink. A fox, not a peacock. Ukraine treats the F-16 the opposite of how many countries use their fighters. No open ramp displays, no predictable bases. Instead, the jets disappear into a moving shell game, hidden in hardened shelters, improvised strips, underground revetments, and pop-up airfields. Move the jets, move the crews, move the spares, move the fuel. Repeat. When Russia fires, it hits echoes, not aircraft. This isn't magic, it's logistics with a sense of humor. And the humor gets better. Inflatable F-16 decoys in full scale and perfect markings pop up where satellites expect to see real jets. A cheap rubber balloon can absorb a $1 million missile. Somewhere, an accountant on the Russian side cries softly.
A new kind of punch. From day one, the F-16 gave Ukraine something it had desperately lacked, a true fire-and-forget beyond visual range capability. AIM-120 AMRAAMs don't ask a pilot to track a target manually. They allow a Ukrainian pilot to fire, break away, reposition, and let the missile finish the job. Overnight, Russian fighters were forced to respect an airspace they previously handled with swagger. And the Vipers didn't arrive empty-handed for ground attack either. Ukrainian F-16s were wired for a full NATO arsenal. Harm anti-radiation missiles to punish enemy radars. JDAM-ER kits to launch guided bombs from far behind front lines. GBU-39B small-diameter bombs, tiny, precise glide weapons that fly up to 100 kilometers. By February 2025, observers were spotting Ukrainian F-16s launching SDB strike missions, silent, sterile, GPS-guided stabs that let the jets stay inside Ukrainian airspace while the bombs travel across the border. Russia now faces a brutal choice: Hunt the arrows, not the archer. Good luck with that. The core of Russia's fear. Russia's most damaging pressure on the front lines has been glide bombs, monstrous 500 to 3,000 kilogram explosives dropped by Su-34s and protected by Su-35 escorts. These bombers stay inside Russia, launch from sanctuary arcs, and rain destruction from afar. Rand's conclusion was blunt. The only solution is to kill the launchers, not the bombs. Armed with AMRAAMs, Ukrainian F-16s create the forward defensive zone Ukraine never had. Even pushing Su-34s back 20 to 30 kilometers drastically increases their miss distance and reduces their time on task. Every minute a Su-34 is defensive is a minute it isn't leveling trenches. The chess above the clouds. The air isn't empty. Russia fields long-range R-77s, R-37Ms, and even the emerging R-77M variant. These can outrange some AAM-120C models, but range isn't everything. Ukrainian F-16s compensate with geometry, altitude control, attack angles, ground-based radar cues, and multi-axis ambushes. You don't need longer arms than your opponent, you just need to make him doubt his reach. The kill web. Ukraine ties its F-16s into a massive interlinked network of Patriots, IRIS-T, NASAMS, and long-range surveillance radars. It's the modern philosophy of phones, not radios. Constant data links, shared targets, overlapping traps. F-16s rise briefly into the sky, attack from where ground radars want them, and then fade out again. Russia calls it an ambush sky. That's the point. And when Russian radar crews try to go dark, Harms makes sure the lesson stays memorable. One frontline joke goes, like, if you whisper AGM-88 next to a Russian radar, it starts driving away on its own. Putin's warnings say more than he means to. Putin has publicly threatened that any Western base supplying Ukraine with F-16s is a valid target. He insists the jets won't change the war. If he believed that, he wouldn't keep repeating it. The fear isn't today's airstrike, it's tomorrow's attrition curve. Ukraine's living fleet. Training in Romania matters. It creates depth. It guarantees replacements. It ensures the Viper isn't a one-season cameo, but a long-term evolution. Dutch jets for €1 weren't charity. They were planting the seeds of a sustainable school. Belgium's F-35 arrivals release more legacy F-16s into Ukraine's pipeline. This fleet isn't a moment, it's a schedule. The mission that defines the Viper. Picture this, a convoy arrives in silence at night. Fuel bladders, a generator tucked inside a container that looks like a potatoes, a mobile avionics bench. 2 F-16s launch before dawn under civilian cloud cover, pretending to be invisible. Minutes later, their radars are hunting the same glide bomb platforms that have terrorized a Ukrainian town for weeks. Ground stations feed them firing solutions. The lead pilot launches first, the wingman follows. 2 Su-34 crews panic, jettison early, scatter, or never drop at all. The town survives another day. Air defense calls that a clean victory. Asymmetry, the quiet killer. Strike missions work the same way, but in reverse. F-16s stay in Ukrainian airspace and toss SDBs toward Russian ammo dumps. A 100-pound glide bomb can trigger hundreds of thousands of pounds of secondary explosions. Every depot destroyed today is dozens of glide bombs that never appear tomorrow. Survivability is a strategy. Russia fires Kinjals and Iskandars at any suspected F-16 location. Ukraine answers with mobility and deception. Inflatable jets, heat decoys, constant movement. The goal isn't to keep the jets hidden forever, it's to deny Russia a pattern. You win long wars by refusing to stand still. Psychology, the invisible battle. For years, Russian pilots roamed their side of the sky confidently, striking from afar with R-37Ms and feeling untouchable. The first AMRAAM kills and the first aborted Russian missions changed their behavior overnight. Pilots began climbing higher, staying farther back, checking their scopes more nervously.
One VKS chatter thread summed it up: "We used to cruise, now we tiptoe." That's deterrence, one cockpit at a time. Russia's adapting, but doctrine scales faster. Russia is upgrading seekers, deploying the R-77M, and increasing glide bomb saturation. The counter remains unchanged: kill the launchers, shrink the safe sky, complicate every mission. A saved Patriot battery is a victory. A drone intercepted because a fighter turned back is another. Stack these small wins long enough, and the map changes shape. The power of a coalition. Belgium's billion-euro commitments, Denmark's early deliveries, Norway's steady supply, the Netherlands' complete package. Together, they guarantee that the F-16s arriving today won't be the last. The cavalry isn't a single charge, it's a timetable. Losses will happen, but the math favors Ukraine. Russian propaganda claims every Western system is made of paper. Some jets will be hit. War is physics. But Russia was never afraid of Ukraine having many F-16s. It feared Ukraine having enough F-16s used with the right doctrine. You don't need to dominate the sky. You just need to make your enemy's most painful attacks unreliable. Armies can fight fear. They cannot fight randomness. A hidden revolution in sustainment. These F-16s don't just bring wings, they bring standards, NATO architecture, Western munitions, interchangeable logistics. Upgrading an F-16 isn't a science project, it's paperwork. And bureaucracy in long wars becomes a quiet weapon. The enemy fears doctrine, not numbers. If Moscow feared numbers, it would ignore a few squadrons. Instead, it threatens every base that supplies them. Because doctrine scales, doctrine multiplies, doctrine turns 2 jets with SDBs into a strategic headache. The clever, almost petty genius. Inflatable decoys, hidden airstrips, convoys disguised as civilian shipments. It's warfare with a mischievous grin, and every prank drains Russia's war machine a little more. Force your enemy to spend $1 million to kill a $1,000 decoy just a few dozen times, and the economics of the war tilt dramatically. Changing the rhythm of the front. Ukrainian brigades that once braced every afternoon for glide bomb attacks now face uncertainty instead of inevitability. Commanders no longer plan around guaranteed Russian air pressure, they plan around the possibility of it. Air power is, at its core, the art of stealing options. The F-16 strategy steals routine. What the Viper cannot yet do. Ukraine still needs more air defenses to shield critical nodes, more hardened shelters, a steadier flow of AMRAAMs and SDBs. Political stamina in Western capitals. These aren't failures. They're the natural costs of being correct early. Why Russia is truly afraid. Not because F-16s are magic, but because they are math. Pilots who don't waste shots. Jets that don't sit still. Weapons that travel farther than the aircraft. Decoys that muddy every Russian targeting cycle. A coalition that replaces what is lost and adds more. Put it all together, and the Russian Air Force now flies in a hall of mirrors, where every confident path becomes a question. The real question isn't whether F-16s will win the war. The real question is, how many days of uncertainty can a giant survive before it starts stumbling over its own feet? Ukraine's F-16 strategy doesn't promise miracles. It promises doubt. Launched in pairs, gliding 100 kilometers, landing exactly where it hurts. Not flashy, not loud, just relentlessly clever. The kind of clever that keeps towns standing and pilots alive. The kind that turns a handful of jets into a habit the enemy can't break. And when habits change, wars change too.